There is a cardboard box in Rick Sanchez's garage, sitting on a shelf with the words time travel stuff written across it in black marker. That box has been there since the very first episode of the show. Rick has never opened it once. Not in 70 episodes. Not in 10 years of adventures. Not when his daughter was dying. Not when his wife was murdered. Not when every problem he ever faced could have been solved by walking across the garage and lifting the lid. That single unopened box is the clue to what Rick and Morty has really been doing this entire time. The show is not about time travel, or aliens, or grandfather-grandson bonding. The show is about a man who is surrounded by loopholes and refuses to use them. And every paradox the show has ever built, every clone, every copy, every impossible ending has been pointing at that box from the very beginning. Welcome to Ricktopus. Let us begin. The no time travel rule that kept breaking itself. There is a cardboard box in Rick Sanchez's garage. It sits on a shelf above his workbench, usually behind something else, sometimes half hidden by a tarp or a stack of scrap metal. The box has words written on the side in black marker. Those words are time travel stuff. You can see the box in the very first episode of the show. You can see it in episodes from the second season, the third season, the fourth. It is one of the longest running visual jokes in Rick and Morty, and most people have watched the show for years without ever thinking about it twice. That box is the entire thesis of this section. A man who can fold space, jump between realities, build robots that pass butter, and engineer a portable device that lets him freeze time for months at a stretch, has a box of time travel equipment that he has never once opened on camera. Not because he can't, because he won't. Dan Harmon and Justin Roiland said in early interviews, before the show even got popular, that they were never going to do time travel. They were very specific about it. Other shows use time travel as a crutch, they said. Time travel made every problem solvable. Time travel made every death temporary. Time travel was the easiest and laziest way to write science fiction, because once you had it, nothing could ever really matter again. If someone died, you could just go back. If you made a mistake, you could just go back. Harmon and Roiland wanted a show where choices stuck, where the worst outcome was always possible, and where no amount of scientific cleverness could save you from the basic fact of having done the thing you did. So, they made a rule. Rick does not do time travel. And then they spent 10 seasons finding ways around it. The first real test of the rule came at the end of season 1. In the episode Ricksy Business, Rick hosts a massive house party while Beth and Jerry are out of town. The party spirals out of control. Things break. Aliens show up. Furniture gets destroyed. The cops come, and Rick, facing the prospect of his daughter coming home to a ruined house, does something drastic. He freezes time. He turns it off like a light switch for the entire universe. And then he, Morty, and Summer spend the next several months, in their own personal experience, walking through a frozen world cleaning up the mess. When season 2 starts with the episode A Rickall in Time, we find out time has been frozen for about 6 months. That is 6 months in which Rick, Morty, and Summer have aged and lived while everyone else on Earth has stood perfectly still. And when Rick finally unfreezes time, he warns his grandchildren that things are going to be unstable for a while. Reality has to catch up with itself. For a short window, any kind of disagreement or doubt between them could tear the world apart. Morty and Summer, being teenagers, immediately start arguing. What happens next is the show finding its first big loophole. Time does not travel backward or forward, but time splits. It fractures. Because Summer and Morty are uncertain about something small, reality itself gets uncertain about what happened. And the single thread of reality they are standing on splits into 2 parallel copies. Then those 2 copies split into 4. Then those 4 copies split into more. The garage they are standing in starts falling apart piece by piece, dropping away into a black, empty space filled with little cats that represent all the possible outcomes of every question nobody can answer. Now, notice what the show has done here. This is not technically time travel. Nobody is going to the past. Nobody is visiting the future. But the rules of time have been bent so badly that it might as well be. Rick has broken his own rule by refusing to break it. He found something worse. He found a way to fracture reality itself into versions. And the only way to put it back together is for everyone to be absolutely certain about what is happening and what they want. This is when the testicle monster shows up. A 4-dimensional being appears, floating in the void between the split realities, and immediately starts scolding Rick. This being is a kind of time cop, an officer of the actual fabric of reality, and he is furious. Rick has done something illegal. Rick has taken a time crystal that did not belong to him. Rick has broken reality itself, and now Rick, Morty, and Summer are going to time prison forever. The being's name is Schlimmy Pants. He has a testicle for a head. He is one of the most genuinely strange creations in the entire show. The point of Schlimmy Pants, and this is worth sitting with for a moment, is that the universe of Rick and Morty actually has a police force for time crimes. There is an entire fourth-dimensional court system. There are detention centers. There are officers on duty right now, waiting to catch anyone who messes with the natural order of when things happen. This is the world Rick lives in, and the show is telling us in this very first episode of its second season that the rule against time travel is not just a creative choice made by Harmon and Roiland. It is a rule enforced inside the show by beings who will hunt Rick down if he breaks it. Rick beats up Schlimmy Pants and sends him flying back into the time stream. And here the contradiction starts to get interesting, because in the after-credits scene of that same episode, we see Schlimmy Pants and another time cop trapped inside a giant bubble, being teleported through different historical eras at the speed of a click. One moment they are in a cave with dinosaurs, the next they are in a medieval marketplace, the next they are watching George Washington cross the Delaware. The time cop is traveling through time. Even the police who arrest people for time travel are themselves moving through time. The rule has a loophole built into its enforcement. The show keeps finding these loopholes. In season 4, in the episode Rattlestar Ricklactica, Morty accidentally starts a chain of events that leads to a planet full of intelligent snakes inventing time travel. Rick, forced to deal with the mess, has to travel back to 1985 in snake history and plant a book of time travel instructions at a snake university so that the snakes will invent time travel earlier, which will then trigger the time cops to notice and step in. To stop time travel from destroying his life, Rick uses time travel. He uses it while insisting, with a completely straight face, that he does not do time travel. The episode never lets him off the hook for this. It keeps cutting back to the chaos in his own kitchen, where future snakes are arriving to assassinate Jerry, and the snake versions of famous historical figures are dying in backward order because of what happened 3 steps earlier in the chain. Then in season 4, in the episode The Vat of Acid, Rick is finally pushed to build a time machine by Morty, who is frustrated that his grandfather never takes his ideas seriously. The device looks like a small remote with a button. Press it and you return to whatever moment you marked as your save point, like a video game. Morty uses it to mess around. He commits crimes. He lives out every fantasy. He even starts a relationship with a girl he loves. And when everything goes wrong, he hits the button and goes back, or so he thinks. At the end of the episode, Rick reveals the truth. The button was never time travel. The button was something else, something Rick built specifically because he still refuses to do time travel. Every time Morty pressed that button, he did not go back. He jumped sideways into another universe where the bad thing had not happened yet, and in doing so, he killed the version of himself that was already living there. Rick shows him the evidence. Morty has been committing small murders every time he wanted a do-over, and none of his actions have been erased. They have all happened. They are all real. They are all still out there in the realities he left behind. This is the rule working exactly as Harmon and Roiland designed it. The show refuses to give its characters the escape hatch of time travel, and every time the characters reach for that escape hatch, the show punishes them by making it something uglier. Morty did not get a do-over. He got a body count. And the joke is that Rick has done this his whole life. Rick's entire way of living, jumping between realities, swapping one Morty for another, replacing broken worlds with slightly better copies, is a kind of sideways time travel that pretends not to be. He never goes back. He just finds a version of now that he likes better, and he walks into it like he owns the place. The box in the garage is what makes this whole thing land, because the box is never opened, but it is always there. Season after season, episode after episode, Rick will walk past that shelf, grab some tool or weapon or random piece of scrap, and the box of time travel stuff will sit right there in the background, untouched. It is a promise the show makes to its audience, over and over. We are not going to do the easy thing. We are not going to save you from consequences. The tool exists. Rick could use it. Rick has chosen not to. In the season 3 premiere, in a scene many fans missed at the time, Rick sits across from a Federation agent who is trying to scan his memories. To trick the agent, Rick invents an origin story for himself. In that invented story, Rick is a quiet family man, and a second Rick, a visitor from another universe, arrives one night and offers him a device. The device is a portal gun. It can let him travel anywhere in the multiverse. Our Rick refuses. He wants to stay with his family. He wants a normal life. The visiting Rick, furious at the rejection, blows up our Rick's garage, killing his wife Diane and his young daughter Beth. Only then, broken and alone, does our Rick begin building portal technology. Not for fun, not for adventure, just to find the man who took everything from him. At the end of the scene, Rick calls the whole thing a complete completely made-up story. It was bait. He made it up to fool the agent. For years, fans argued about what was true. Was Diane real? Was the visiting Rick real? Was any of it real? The show played coy. It refused to answer. In Season 4, in the episode Never Ricking Morty, a brief flash of memory showed Rick holding a baby Morty with Diane beside him, saying the words, "He is just like you." But even then, the show framed this memory as unreliable, extracted under pressure. Maybe true, maybe not. The final answer came in the Season 5 finale, Rick Mirai Jack, and then was confirmed again in Season 6. Diane was real. The visiting Rick was real. His name is Rick Prime. Everything in the fabricated origin story was true, except for the part about how Rick built the portal gun. That is the one piece Rick lied about. The rest was the most honest thing he had ever said about himself, and he only said it while claiming it was a lie. This is the deepest layer of the no time travel rule. The show does not just refuse to let its characters go back in time. It refuses to let its main character go back to the past inside his own head. Rick cannot grieve Diane because grieving her would mean admitting she existed. Rick cannot miss young Beth because missing her would mean admitting he has a version of her who needs him now. Rick has traveled through millions of realities looking for the one man who ruined his life, and the one place he will not travel, the one timeline he refuses to visit, is the memory of the night it happened. Time travel is not something he cannot do. It is something he will not let himself do. The tools are in the box. The door is unlocked. He will not open it. This is the show's most careful paradox, and it is the one every other paradox rests on top of. If Rick would just open the box, the entire show would be different. Diane could be saved. Beth could grow up with a mother. The Cronenberg world could be fixed. The Beth clone could be made unnecessary. The decoy families, the death crystals, the save point button, the story train, every mistake the show has built its drama on could, theoretically, be unwound, and Rick will not do it. The rule, made outside the show by its creators, is enforced inside the show by Rick himself, for reasons that have nothing to do with physics and everything to do with pain. There is a box in his garage, and he never opens it. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. That choice is the foundation everything else is built on, and the first cracks in that foundation start showing up in the episode that taught a generation of fans what kind of show they were actually watching. The one where Rick and Morty did not go back in time, but did something far worse. The one where they left a planet behind, walked into someone else's life, and buried 2 bodies in the backyard before dinner. Section 2, Rick Potion number 9, and the dimension that was never really theirs. There is a moment near the end of the 6th episode of Season 1, Rick Potion number 9, that the show never really comes back from. Rick and Morty are standing in a backyard. The grass is a different shade of green than the grass we have seen all season. The house looks almost the same, but not quite. The sun is setting, and in front of them, on the ground, are 2 bodies. One of them is Rick. The other is a 14-year-old boy in a yellow shirt, his face peaceful, his eyes closed. The boy looks exactly like Morty. He is exactly like Morty. In every way that matters, except one, he is Morty. Rick hands his grandson a shovel. The Morty who is still alive starts digging. That scene is the single most important thing that ever happened in Rick and Morty, and for the first 3 or 4 viewings, most people do not understand why. The episode plays like a comedy. It plays like a mess Rick made and then cleaned up, and then the family sat down and had dinner like nothing had changed. The credits roll, the show moves on. The next episode, Raising Gazorpazorp, treats the family exactly the same as it did before. Jerry is still Jerry, Beth is still Beth, Summer is still Summer. Nobody mentions the burial, nobody mentions the Cronenberg monsters. Nobody mentions the fact that the world they are living in is not the world they were born into. And that is the paradox. To understand what happened, you have to understand what Rick and Morty went there to do. The episode starts small. Morty has a crush on a girl named Jessica. There is a school dance coming up. Morty, desperate and 14 and an idiot, asks Rick for help. Rick, being Rick, makes him a love potion out of vole hormones. He warns Morty not to give it to anyone who has the flu. Morty, being Morty, does not listen carefully. Jessica has the flu. Morty gives her the potion. The flu virus grabs onto the love chemicals and becomes airborne. And within an hour, every living thing on Earth connected to Morty by air is in love with him. Not a crush, not a feeling. A chemical obsession so total that people will crash cars and tear through walls to get to him. Rick tries to fix it. He makes a second formula out of praying mantis DNA. It does not cure anyone. It turns them into praying mantis people who still want Morty, except now they also want to mate with him and then bite his head off afterward. Rick tries again. He mixes in something stronger. This time, it breaks. Everyone on Earth, except for people genetically related to Morty, twists into grotesque, lumpy monsters with arms arms coming out of their faces and eyes in their chests. Rick calls them Cronenbergs, after the film director David Cronenberg, who made a career out of body horror movies where human flesh distorts into terrible shapes. The world is over. The people are gone. Beth and Jerry and Summer survive because they share DNA with Morty, but everyone else is a walking mass of wrong. Morty, to his credit, is horrified. He wants to know what they are going to do. He wants to know how they are going to fix it. He wants to know how they are going to save the billions of people who, through no fault of their own, are now crawling around on broken limbs, screaming for their grandson. Rick's answer is the thing that changes everything. Rick says there is no fixing it. Rick says they are not going to try. Rick pulls out his portal gun, punches some numbers into it, and starts scanning through realities. He is looking for one specific kind of world. He is looking for a reality where a different Rick tried the same thing, failed the same way, but then figured out how to fix it. A reality where the Cronenberg virus got stopped. A reality where the population got turned back into people. And then, specifically, a reality where, just after the world was saved, the Rick and Morty of that world died in an accident. A gas leak, a falling beam, some random moment of bad luck that killed them both, quickly and cleanly, before anyone noticed. He finds one. The reality has a number. The number is Dimension C131. And Rick opens a portal, steps through with Morty, and walks into a backyard where two fresh bodies are lying on the grass. Their own bodies. Just slightly younger, slightly different, and very dead. The viewer has to sit with what this means for a second, because the show is counting on you not to. What Rick has done is not complicated, mechanically. He has simply used the portal gun. The portal gun does this all the time. Rick has been jumping between realities since the first episode, but what he has done, morally and logically, is something the show has never shown him do before. He has walked away from a world he broke. He has abandoned every person on that planet to die as Cronenbergs in a ruined city. He has left Jerry and Beth and Summer behind, alone, to survive as best they can. And he has replaced himself, physically, with the corpse of another version of himself. He has stolen a dead man's life. And not just Rick has done this. Morty has done it too. Because the other piece of this, the piece that takes years to fully land, is that the Morty who buried that body is not the same Morty who dug the hole. The Morty in the yellow shirt on the ground is the Morty who was born in that backyard, who grew up in that house, who went to that school, who had his own Jessica and his own Summer and his own life. And now, for the rest of the show, another Morty, our Morty, is going to live that Morty's life. Sit in his chair, eat at his table, be called son by parents who are not his real parents, be called brother by a Summer who never met him. The show knows this. The show does not soften it. In the final shots of the episode, Morty walks into the new house, looks around at the new Beth and the new Jerry and the new Summer, and sits down on the couch. He does not smile. He does not speak. His eyes are somewhere else. The camera holds on him. The song playing is Look On Down From the Bridge, a slow, sad song about giving up and letting go, and Morty just stares. For the rest of the episode, he does not say another word. This is the moment the show stopped being a cartoon about a grandfather and grandson having adventures and started being something else. Because from this episode onward, every single story in Rick and Morty, every adventure, every family dinner, every joke about Jerry being bad at his job is happening in a world that does not belong to the main characters. The Rick and Morty we watch are foreigners in their own life. Every Beth they hug is not their Beth. Every Summer they fight with is not their sister. Every Jerry they mock is not the Jerry they grew up with. They are living in a house built for strangers, and they are the strangers. In the original world they left behind, the one where they were born, the one where they belong, is not gone. The show refuses to pretend it is gone. In a short scene after the credits of Rick Potion number 9, we see what happens to the Beth and Jerry and Summer that our heroes abandoned. They are living in a van in the ruined landscape. Beth is cooking a dead Cronenberg over an open fire. Summer is acting out scenes from the movie Jaws in a cardboard box because there is no television anymore. And Beth, the real Beth, the original Beth, says something startling. She says she is happy. She says that without Rick and without Morty, her family has finally become close. She says her marriage is better. She says she has peace. The world is a ruin, but she has her husband back, and she has her daughter, and she has accepted that her father and her son are gone. The show will return to these three characters. In the season 3 premiere, The Rick Shank Rickdemption, we see them again, still surviving, still alive, still in that ruined world. And then, much later, later, in the Season 6 premiere Solarix, the original dimension comes back with an entirely new name. The fans call it the Prime Dimension. Rick calls it worse things. It is the reality that spawned the show. The first set of Beth and Jerry and Summer we ever met. The first Morty we ever knew. And it is still there, still broken, still populated by Cronenbergs. And when Morty is accidentally sent back to it during the portal reset, he returns to the home of his birth, the house he was raised in, and finds it exactly as it was left, destroyed, empty, full of monsters. His real childhood, frozen in ruin. Nothing about this has ever been undone. In more than 10 years of episodes, across 7 seasons and over 70 stories, the show has never once gone back and fixed the Cronenberg world. Rick has never tried. Morty has never asked. The writers have never treated it like a problem waiting to be solved. It is simply the thing that happened, and the consequences of it are still sitting in the ground of that backyard, behind the house they now live in the graves they dug themselves. And the paradox of this episode is not, on its face, a science fiction paradox. There is no closed loop of cause and effect. There is no impossible causality. The paradox is a paradox of identity. The question Rick Potion number 9 plants and refuses to pull out is this. When the show says Rick and Morty, what does that actually mean? Is it a specific pair of people?
Rick Sanchez of one numbered dimension and Morty Smith of the same, with a shared history and a continuous identity? Or is it a function, a role, a pattern that can be filled by any Rick and any Morty who happen to be standing where the pattern needs them? The show has never answered this cleanly. Every time the answer seems clear, it muddles itself again. There is an episode where our main Rick writes down his dimension number as C137, which is how the show was eventually labeled. But the number C137 refers to the Rick. The Morty is not from C137 originally. The Morty is from the reality that was broken in Rick Potion number 9, the one now called the Prime Dimension. And the Beth, Jerry, and Summer we have been watching for seasons are not either of those. They are the Beth, Jerry, and Summer of dimension C131, the replacement dimension, who Rick and Morty met only after the burial. So when the show says Rick and Morty, it means a Rick from one universe, a Morty from a second universe, and a family from a third universe, all stitched together in a house that none of them were born in, none of them are from the same place, none of them share an origin, and none of them, except Rick, know any of this. That is the quiet horror of the episode. Morty knows. Morty is the only person in that family besides Rick who remembers what happened. Morty watched his own corpse go into the ground. Morty watched his mother become a stranger pretending to be his mother, and Morty has to carry this secret alone for the rest of his life. 2 episodes later, in Rick 60 Minutes, he will take Summer into the backyard during a breakdown and show her the graves. He will tell her, quietly, that he is not her real brother. She will not fully believe him. She will take it as metaphor. She will move on. And Morty will stand there, knowing that the only person on Earth who fully understands what he is the 80-year-old man who moved him into someone else's bedroom without asking. This is the foundation the rest of the show rests on. Every future episode, every joke, every adventure, every moment of Beth hugging her dad, or Jerry trying to be a good father, or Summer rolling her eyes at her little brother, is happening inside a world that was not theirs until Rick walked in and took it. The family is real to them. The love is real. But the origin of it, the start of it, is an act of quiet violence that nobody talks about at the dinner table. And the show's genius is that it makes this bearable. It makes this funny. It makes you forget for long stretches that the bodies are still in the ground. But every once in a while, in a quiet moment, the camera will linger on Morty's face while someone calls him sweetie or asks him to pass the potatoes, and you remember. He is a ghost in his own life, and the grandfather who put him there is the only person who knows. Of all the paradoxes the show will ever introduce, this one has the longest shadow, because every future time loop, every future clone, every future question about which version of someone is the real version is being asked in a house where that question has already been answered, and the answer is buried out back. The show's entire obsession with copies and originals, with replacements and doubles, with whether a life lived by a different version of you still counts as your life, starts here, in this backyard, with this shovel, with this 14-year-old boy looking down at his own face in the dirt. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. And the strangest thing of all is that this is not even the most technically complicated paradox the show will eventually build. Because a few seasons later, on a distant planet crawling with intelligent snakes, snakes. Rick and Morty will walk into a situation where cause and effect stop being a straight line at all, where the reason something happens is the thing that already happened, and where a book of instructions will sit on a desk with no author, no origin, and no possible explanation for how it got there. Section 3. The Bootstrap Paradox of Snake Time Travel in Rattlestar Ricklactica. There is a book sitting on a desk at a university. The university is called Snake MIT. It is located on a planet in the Andromeda Galaxy, and the year is 1985. The book is roughly the size of a small paperback. It has a plain cover. It contains, written in clear scientific language, the complete instructions for how to build a working time machine. A snake scientist picks it up. He opens it. He reads it. And within a few years, because of what he reads in that book, the snakes of his planet will invent time travel and change history forever. The book has no author. The book has no origin. The book, in a very literal way, was never actually written by anyone. That is the puzzle at the heart of Rattlestar Ricklactica, the 5th episode of Season 4, which aired in December of 2019. It is one of the most structurally clean paradoxes the show has ever put on screen, and it passes by so fast and is buried under so many snake jokes that most people watch the episode without ever noticing what the plot is actually doing. But if you slow it down, and if you trace the logic carefully, Rattlestar Ricklactica contains a puzzle that has kept philosophers up at night for decades. It is a loop with no beginning, a chain of cause and effect with no first link. To understand what happens, you have to start with Morty being Morty. The episode opens with Rick and Morty going to a planet full of intelligent snakes. The reason is not important. What matters is that Morty, while there, accidentally injures a snake. The snake is hurt. The snake is dying. Morty, who feels bad about the things he does, refuses to leave the snake behind. He scoops it up and brings it home to Earth. He names the snake Slippy. He tries to nurse it back to health. And then, predictably, Slippy dies anyway. Morty, still unable to accept what he has done, decides to return the dead snake to the snake planet so that Slippy can at least be buried among his own kind. This single decision, made by a guilty teenager, is what causes everything that follows. When Morty drops Slippy's body back onto the snake planet, the snakes of that world see the body. They see a dead astronaut snake, clearly killed by some alien force. They assume, reasonably, that aliens have attacked their planet. Their entire civilization, which had been peaceful and slow-moving, immediately shifts. The snakes start building weapons. They start organizing armies. They start looking up at the sky with fear. And within a few short years of snake history, they make the leap. They invent time travel. They build machines that can send their soldiers backward through the centuries. And their plan is simple. Go back. Find the aliens responsible for the death of Slippy. Kill those aliens before the attack ever happens. Back on Earth, Rick's house starts filling up with snake assassins from the future. A snake appears in the kitchen and tries to shoot Morty. Beth kills it. Another snake appears in the hallway. Summer kills that one. More and more snakes keep arriving, each one sent from a slightly later point in snake future history, each one with better weapons and smarter tactics. The family realizes quickly that they are under attack from an entire civilization that has decided to use time travel to erase their existence. Rick, who has spent the entire show insisting that he does not do time travel, is now forced to fix a time travel problem, and the way he fixes it is the thing that turns Rattlestar Ricklactica from a funny episode about space snakes into a genuine brain twister. Rick grabs Morty and portals back to the snake planet. Not the present-day snake planet, the snake planet of 1985. He walks onto the campus of Snake MIT, dressed in a snake costume to blend in. He has a book in his hand. The book is labeled clearly as a guide to building a time machine. He sets the book down on a desk, makes sure no snake scientist is looking, and slides it into place like it has always been there. Then he and Morty leave. A snake scientist finds the book. The scientist reads it. The scientist, along with his colleagues, uses the knowledge in that book to build the first snake time machine. That time machine is the foundation of everything the snakes will ever do with time travel. The time machine leads to more time machines. The time machines lead to the assassins being sent back to Earth. Now stop. Where did the book come from? The snakes did not write it. The snakes had no time travel before they read it. They only developed time travel because the book told them how. So the book had to come from outside their civilization. The book was planted by Rick. But Rick did not invent snake time travel either. Rick is a human. Rick has never built a snake time machine. Rick is not even especially interested in time travel, as he has told us over and over. So where did Rick get the instructions in the book? The answer is that Rick got the instructions from the snakes. Specifically, he got them from the snake time travelers who were already attacking his family. By studying their technology, by seeing how it worked, he was able to reverse engineer the science and write it down in a book. Then he took that book back to 1985 and planted it on a desk so that the snakes would have the knowledge they needed to build the very machines he just studied. studied. So the snakes built time machines using information from a book written by Rick. Rick wrote the book using information he got from studying snake time machines. The snake time machines only exist because the book exists. The book only exists because the snake time machines exist. Each one causes the other. Neither one has a first moment. There is no point in the timeline where someone sat down with no knowledge and figured out how to make a time machine out of nothing. The knowledge simply exists in a loop. It loops from the book to the scientists to the machines to Rick and back to the book. And every piece of that loop requires every other piece to already have happened. Take any one of them away and the whole thing collapses. But put any one of them in place and the whole thing is already complete. This is the puzzle that scientists and philosophers call a bootstrap paradox. The name comes from the old saying about pulling yourself up by your own bootstraps, which means lifting yourself off the ground by grabbing the loops on the back of your boots and yanking upward. It is impossible. You cannot lift your own body using only your own body as leverage. But in a bootstrap paradox, that is exactly what the information does. It lifts itself into existence by using itself as the lever. It is the thing that creates itself. Rick and Morty, in the middle of all this, find themselves caught inside the loop. Because when they arrive on the snake planet in the past, intending to plant the book, they do not yet have the book. They are stuck. They do not know how to write it. They are in the past, about to cause time travel to happen, and they do not have the knowledge they need to cause it. Rick is pacing. Morty is panicking. And then, from around a corner, two familiar figures walk out. They are a future Rick and a future Morty. The future Morty has a black eye. The future Rick is holding the book. He hands it to the current Rick without saying much. He tells him what to do. He walks away. The current Rick takes the book, plants it on the desk, and the loop is complete. Now watch what has just happened. The Rick in the scene got the book from a version of himself that came from the future. That future Rick got the book from where? Well, from an even later future Rick, presumably. Who got it from where? Where, at any point in this chain, did someone sit down and write the book from nothing? Where did the information start? It did not start. It just is. The book exists because the book exists. The snake storyline keeps spiraling after this.
Because once the snakes have time travel, they start using it to change their own history.
One snake scientist sends a student back to 1865 to prevent the assassination of their version of Abraham Lincoln. The student succeeds. He hands Lincoln a note telling him to duck, and the gunman misses. But saving Lincoln changes snake history in ways nobody expected. And now, somehow, snake Nazis have won Snake World War II. So the student grabs a chainsaw and goes back again, this time to Snake Berlin, to kill Snake Hitler. Other snakes follow him back, some trying to help, some trying to stop him. And soon, Snake Berlin is a battlefield of time travelers fighting each other, while Snake Hitler watches from his bathroom window.
Back on Earth, the snake invasion of Rick's house gets worse. The snakes keep coming. Summer is firing a machine gun. Beth is slashing with a sword. Jerry is outside trying to stop a snake from crashing a plane, while the snake accidentally causes the plane to crash anyway. Everything is happening at once. Time is unraveling. And then, finally, the snake time cops arrive. Two officers from the snake version of the fourth dimensional time police show up in the deep past of the snake planet. They travel to prehistoric snake history, find the very first snake who ever used a tool, and beat that snake to death. This single act undoes everything. Without that first tool-using snake, the snake species never develops technology. Without technology, no time machines ever get built. Without time machines, no assassins ever come after the Smith family. The whole invasion collapses backward through the timeline. The snakes in Rick's house start flickering, fading, and then writhing in pain before eating their own tails. They blink out of existence. But here is the question the episode never addresses, and this is where the paradox gets truly strange. If the snake time cops went back and erased all of snake civilization, then the book Rick planted at Snake MIT in 1985 should have been found by nobody. There should be no snake scientists to find it. There should be no Snake MIT. The entire chain of events the book was supposed to cause has been erased. So did the loop ever actually happen? Did Rick travel to 1985 or not? Did he and Morty ever meet their future selves in that hallway? Or was that just a vision from a timeline that no longer exists? The book is still somewhere.
Or it isn't. The show does not say. The snakes are gone, and with them, the civilization that found the book, studied the book, built the machines, and sent the machines back. And yet the book had to have existed because Rick and Morty were there to see it. They held it. They set it down. It was real, unless it never was. This is the deeper paradox of the episode, and the reason Rattlestar Ricklactica is one of the most carefully written puzzles in the show. The bootstrap paradox of the book itself was already strange, but by the end, the show undoes undoes the entire chain by erasing the very species that was supposed to complete the loop, and the audience is left with no clean answer about what was real and what was not. Did Rick plant a book that caused an entire civilization to invent time travel? Or did he plant a book that was then erased from existence? Or did he plant a book in a universe where no snake civilization ever existed to read it? All three are possible. None of them are confirmed. And the episode ends with Rick shrugging. He grabs a beer, he walks back into the house, he says something dismissive to Morty about how sometimes these things work themselves out, and he lets the camera cut to a joke about Jerry hanging from a tree. The Smith family, standing in a house that was full of snake corpses 10 minutes ago, simply goes about their evening. The snakes never invaded, the snakes never existed, maybe. The time police fixed it, maybe. Or maybe the time police did something worse, and there is a version of reality somewhere where the loop is still spinning and the book is still sitting on a desk at Snake MIT, waiting to be found by someone who should not exist. The genius of Rattlestar Ricklactica is that it takes the most famous, impossible puzzle in science fiction and uses it as a throwaway plot device. The Bootstrap paradox, a puzzle that has been written about in physics journals and argued about by philosophers for decades, is dropped into an episode where the punchline is a snake in a swastika armband smoking a cigar. The show respects the paradox enough to build it correctly, and disrespects it enough to never once pause for drama about how strange it is. That is the show's entire relationship to physics in one episode. The rules are real, the rules are precise, and the rules are funny because the characters are too tired, too drunk, or too annoyed to notice what the rules are doing. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. There is, however, a version of the paradox puzzle that Rick cannot shrug off. A version where the loop is not about a book or a machine or a snake, but about a person. A version where the question is not where did the information come from, but which person in a room full of copies is the one who actually experienced the things they remember. Because there is an episode, 2 full seasons after the snakes, where Rick builds a device that looks like a video game save point, and every time Morty presses the button, something happens that the show has to pretend is time travel, but secretly, quietly, is something far more personal and far more cruel. Section 4. The Vat of Acid and the Lie Called Time Travel. The episode opens with a mistake being set up as a joke. Rick and Morty are standing in a warehouse on some alien planet, meeting with a group of gangsters. There is a crystal exchange happening. Rick hands over what the gangsters want. The gangsters, being gangsters, pull guns. They betray Rick immediately. And Rick, with the kind of preparation that only a paranoid genius would bring to a simple swap, reveals that he has planned for exactly this moment. In the middle of the warehouse, behind a curtain, is a large metal tub filled with green liquid. Rick pulls Morty by the arm, runs across the floor, and jumps. The two of them dive into the tub. The gangsters watch, horrified, as a cloud of green vapor rises up. Rick and Morty appear to sink to the bottom. Bones float to the surface. The gangsters have just watched a grandfather and grandson commit suicide in a vat of acid rather than be caught. Except the acid is fake, the bones are fake, there are air hoses at the bottom of the tub. Rick and Morty are alive, breathing, and waiting for the gangsters to leave so they can climb out. The gangsters do not leave. Instead, they stand around the tub for a long time, talking about what they have just seen. One of them says he is shaken. Another says he had no idea Rick was the kind of person who would end his own life rather than be captured. They start to actually mourn. They discuss Rick as if he had been a friend. And Morty, who has been holding his breath for what feels like forever, loses his patience, climbs out of the tub, and shoots them. Back at home, Morty is angry. He tells Rick the vat of acid plan was stupid. He tells Rick it depended on too many things going right and on the gangsters behaving in a very specific way, and that it would only work in a story where everyone acted like a movie character instead of a real person. Rick takes this personally. Rick has been told his invention was stupid by his grandson, and Rick, as he always does when his pride is wounded, decides to teach Morty a lesson. Morty, during the argument, brings up an old complaint. He says Rick never takes his ideas seriously. He says he has always wanted Rick to build a very specific thing, a save point, like in a video game, a small device you could press and it would mark your current moment in time. Then, whenever things went wrong, you could press the button again and you would be returned to that exact moment. No mistakes, no consequences, just a clean slate over and over until you got the outcome you wanted. Rick tells him that sounds like time travel, and he has told Morty 100 times that he does not do time travel. Morty, getting clever, says it is not time travel. He says it is just a save point. You do not go backward in time. You only ever reset to a moment you already picked. It is more like a bookmark bookmark than a trip. Rick considers this. He goes into the garage, and within a single evening, he emerges with a device. It is small, it is round, it has a big red button. He hands it to Morty and walks away, refusing to explain how it works. Morty is thrilled. Morty is free. What happens next is a montage that takes up nearly a third of the episode. Morty uses the save point device to do everything he has ever wanted to do without consequence. He walks into his school wearing only his underwear, embarrasses himself, presses the button, comes back. He jumps over a manhole cover, falls in, presses the button. He flirts with people. He picks fights. He robs stores. He insults teachers. He bullies bullies. He tries every dumb, mean, and reckless thing that his 14-year-old brain has ever thought about. And every time something goes wrong, he presses the button and walks the moment back. The montage is fast and funny. The show treats it like a gift. A teenager with no real responsibility, given the one tool that every teenager has ever wanted, and allowed to use it for an entire episode. Then the montage slows down. Morty sees a girl walking into a coffee shop. He presses the button, creating a save point. And then he walks up to her, clumsy and nervous, and starts talking. She is not interested at first. He presses the button. He tries again. She is slightly more interested. He presses it again. He keeps going, not in a creepy way, in the way a boy who is scared of being rejected might try and try and try again, until he finally finds the version of himself that the other person is willing to listen to. He succeeds. He asks her out. They start dating. They are happy together. She becomes, over the course of what appears to be several months, the most important person in his life. He falls in love. Not a crush, real love. The show takes the time to show their relationship in small, quiet moments. Eating dinner, laughing at jokes, being nervous, being close. Morty has never looked this calm before. Morty has never looked this happy. Then they get on a plane together. The plane crashes in the mountains. They are stranded in the snow, freezing, with nothing to eat. His girlfriend gets hurt. Morty could press the button at any moment and return to before they ever met. He does not press it. He makes the decision to stay. He and his girlfriend survive on the plane for weeks. He eats the bodies of other passengers who died in the crash. He refuses to give up. He treks miles through the snow alone to get help. He saves her. He saves them both. They are rescued. They come home. It is, quietly, one of the most genuinely moving things the show has ever done. Morty has chosen, on purpose, to live with the consequences of the hardest thing that has ever happened to him, because the love is worth more than the easy escape. And then, at the welcome home party, his father Jerry, being Jerry, bumps into the save point device in Morty's pocket. Jerry presses the button by accident. The world snaps back. Morty is in front of the coffee shop. The girl is walking in. She has no memory of him. The months they spent together are gone. Morty tries again. He walks up to her. He says the same things that worked the last time. She pepper sprays him. He tries again, using slightly different words. She walks away. He tries again. He is crying now. He is covered in pepper spray. The shop is starting to notice. He cannot recreate what they had. He does not know what specific combination of sentences and looks and accidents created the version of her that fell in love with him. And every time he tries, he fails differently. Eventually, the save point itself gets overwritten, and he cannot even go back to the moment before she pepper sprayed him. She is gone. The relationship is gone. The months they spent together, the plane crash, the rescue, the love, all of it existed only for him. She has no memory of any of it. To her, he is just a stranger who will not stop bothering her outside a coffee shop. Morty goes home. He finds Rick. He apologizes. He says Rick was right. He says the vat of acid was a good plan. He says he has learned his lesson about living without consequences. He is humbled. He is quiet. He thought he had gotten away with something, and the universe took it back from him, and he has learned what Rick wanted him to learn. This is the moment where Rick, if he were a slightly better person, would let it go. He does not. He tells Morty to come down into the garage. He sits Morty in a chair, and he tells him the truth. The save point device was never time travel. Rick does not do time travel. The device was something else entirely. Every time Morty pressed the button, he did not rewind the world. He jumped sideways into a new universe. A universe that was almost identical to the one he was in, except that the bad thing Morty was trying to undo had not happened yet in this one. And in each of those universes, there was already a Morty living his life. A Morty who had not fallen down the manhole. A Morty who had not embarrassed himself at school. A Morty who had not met the girl at the coffee shop. In order for our Morty to take that Morty's place, the device killed that Morty. Every reset was a murder. Rick plays him the footage. Every time Morty pressed the button, a version of Morty died somewhere, silently, unseen. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands. Every embarrassing moment Morty wanted to erase, another boy with his face and his voice and his memories got his brain turned off so Morty could slide into his life. The save point was a meat grinder. And worst
worst of all, the relationship with the girl was a murder too. There was a Morty in some other universe who had met her honestly, who had said the right things on the first try, who had earned her love without cheating, and our Morty had killed that boy and stolen the rest of his life with her. The whole thing had been real, all of it. Every Morty who had ever existed in any of those universes. The consequences had not been erased, they had been outsourced. And then Rick pushes even harder. He tells Morty that if he wants, Rick can fix it. Rick can merge all of those universes back together. All of the Mortys will come back to life because the universes they lived in will become one universe again, with everyone present. But there is a catch. Every person who ever saw Morty do anything wrong in any of those universes will also be in this new merged universe. The teacher he insulted, the girl he pepper sprayed repeatedly, the cops who chased him, the police Morty shot at when he was playing around with Rick's weapons, all of them. They will all show up in the same world at the same time, with memories of a Morty who has done all of this, and they will be angry. Morty says yes. Merge them. Bring the Mortys back. Rick does it. Within minutes, an angry mob is forming outside the house. Helicopters arrive. The police are there. Protesters are there. A news crew shows up. Ex-girlfriends, old enemies, people Morty barely remembers wronging are all there, wanting his head. The situation is unsurvivable. There is no way out. And Rick, with a small smile on his face, calmly walks Morty over to a corner of the garage and pulls back a curtain. There is a vat of fake acid. Rick tells Morty that the only way out is to fake his death, the thing Morty called stupid, the plan Morty said would never work. Morty gets in the vat. The crowd watches. They see the green mist. They see the bones. They believe. The crowd leaves, heartbroken and confused, convinced that Morty has killed himself. The girl from the coffee shop watches him sink and leaves in tears. And then Rick pulls him out and reveals the final twist. They are not in their home universe. Rick, anticipating this whole mess, had placed them in a spare universe before the merge even happened. The Morty corpses being brought back to life, the girlfriend, the angry mob, all of it happened in a universe that was not theirs. The home they return to is the home they started in. The consequences, once again, have been left in a world they have walked away from. Rick also mentions, offhand, that he is not even the Rick Morty started the episode with. At some point during the merging, when all the universes were folding together, another version of Rick stepped into the role, and all the Ricks merged into one, which means that the Rick standing in the garage now is an average of all possible Ricks who were present in all of those merged universes. And he says, with a shrug, that every Rick in every universe has a vat of acid. So the vat of acid plan was not stupid, it was universal. Every Rick everywhere has one, because every Rick needs one, because every Morty everywhere has at some point gotten into exactly this much trouble. The paradox sits on top of Morty's head like a weight. What does consequence mean if it can be moved to another universe? What does action mean if every version of you is doing every other version of everything? What does love mean if the relationship you had was made possible by killing the boy who would have had it honestly? What does a decision even weigh if the weight can be traded away by pressing a button? Morty does not recover from this episode. In later seasons, he will be darker, quieter, angrier. He will not trust Rick the same way. He will not laugh at the adventures the same way. Something in him breaks in the garage that day when Rick tells him that the months of love he lived through only existed because he pushed a button that killed a boy, and that the universe he is living in now might not even be his own. And the worst part, the part the show does not say out loud, is that Rick did all of this to prove he was right about a fake vat of acid. Morty criticized his grandfather's plan, and his grandfather, to win the argument, put him through hundreds of murders and months of fake love and a final public fake suicide just so he could walk up at the end and say, "See, the vat of acid works." The paradox of this episode is the paradox of consequence itself. Every choice we make happens once, and the version of us who made it has to live with it. But in Rick's universe, where every possible version of every possible choice is already happening somewhere else, consequence becomes a kind of currency. You can trade it between worlds. You can carry it, you can drop it, you can leave it behind in a place you will never visit again. And the only thing a person can really own in a world like that is the choice to not press the button. Morty does not own that. Rick knew he would not. The entire device was a trap, set by a grandfather who wanted to prove to his grandson that easy answers are always worse than hard ones, and who was willing to wreck his grandson's life to prove it. The device is gone by the end of the episode. The vat of acid is still in the garage. The girl is still walking into a coffee shop somewhere, in some universe, not knowing anything about the boy who loved her for months. And Morty, back in a universe that may or may not be his own,
alone is sitting on his bed, quiet again, the way he was quiet the first time he ever buried himself in the backyard. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. But the machinery of the episode, once you understand it, opens a much stranger door. Because if the save point button could create copies of people so perfect that they did not even know they were copies, and could slide another Morty into the life of the original so smoothly that nobody noticed, then the question of who is real and who is a copy stops being a science fiction question and starts being a daily one. And that question, as it turns out, is already living under the same roof as Morty. It is sitting down to breakfast. It is passing him the syrup. It is looking exactly like everyone he has ever known and answering to their names. And nobody, not even Rick, can say for certain whether the person passing the syrup is the one who has always been there. Section 5. Total Rickall and the memory paradox of knowing who was ever real. There is a man named Uncle Steve in the Smith family. He lives a few streets away. He comes over for dinner sometimes. He is a good guy, a little boring, the kind of relative who always brings a bottle of cheap wine and asks the kids how school is going. The family has known him for years. Morty has specific memories of Uncle Steve reading him bedtime stories when he was little. Summer remembers him teaching her to ride a bike. Beth has a photo album somewhere with pictures of Uncle Steve at her wedding. 2 minutes into Total Rickall, the 4th episode of Season 2, Rick walks into the kitchen, pulls out a gun, and shoots Uncle Steve in the head. Uncle Steve, it turns out, has only been in the house for a few hours. The memories of him reading bedtime stories are fake. The photographs are fake. The bottle of wine is fake. Uncle Steve is an alien parasite from another planet, and as he dies on the kitchen floor, his body turns pink and worm-like, revealing the truth. There was never an Uncle Steve. There was only ever this creature, making the family believe he had always been there. And then, slowly, the camera pulls back, and Rick explains what is happening. There is a species of alien parasite. The parasites reproduce by inserting themselves into a host family's memories. They do not appear with any warning. They simply show up, and everyone in the room, including the people who have known each other for decades, instantly remembers them as if they have always been part of the family. A new cousin, a new neighbor, a new family dog. Each one arrives with a full set of flashbacks that feel real, and because the flashbacks feel real, nobody questions them. The host family does not see the new arrival as a stranger. The host family sees a face they love and welcomes them home. The parasite, now accepted, can then create more parasites who also arrive with memories, and so the infection spreads outward through every person the family knows until the entire planet is infected and the parasites move on to the next world. Rick has accidentally brought the parasites to Earth as eggs, hidden in some green rocks he picked up at the end of a previous adventure. Those rocks are sitting in the trash bin in the cold open of this episode, which you only notice if you are watching carefully. By the time Rick figures out what is happening, the house is full of new relatives that nobody can remember arriving. The family sits down at the dining room table to sort it out. That table becomes a battlefield, because the thing about the parasites is that they do not just insert themselves into memory. They insert themselves smoothly. There are no cracks. There is no uncanny feeling. The memories feel exactly like all the other memories the family has. Morty remembers Uncle Steve the same way he remembers his own father. Summer remembers her cousin Nikki with the same warmth she remembers Grandma Sanchez. When Rick says that the parasites are fake, the family does not believe him at first, because their belief in these people is the same kind of belief they have in each other. The real horror of the episode begins when Rick starts asking them to prove who is real. He has them go around the table, name someone, describe a memory of them, try to figure out if that memory is real or manufactured. The family starts listing people. Mr. Beauregard, the family butler, who fought Nazis in a submarine. Sleepy Gary, who everyone remembers as Beth's actual husband, with Jerry relegated to the role of close family friend. Cousin Nicky, who talks like he is from 1930s Brooklyn. Hammer Eye, who is a samurai made entirely of ham. Amish Cyborg, who is half machine and dresses like a 19th century farmer. Ghost in a Jar, who is exactly what he sounds like. There is a photographer dinosaur. There is a rubber ducky with arms. There is a small man who is simply a pencil. Every single one of these characters is sitting somewhere in the house as Rick describes them, and every single one of them has specific memories tied to the family. Beth remembers Sleepy Gary as her husband. Jerry remembers Sleepy Gary as the man he is secretly in love with, based on a flashback where Sleepy Gary taught him how to feel free. Morty remembers Mr. Beauregard being his escort to a school dance when he was afraid to go alone. Summer has a touching memory of Pencil Vester reading to her when she was upset. None of it is real. All of it feels real, and the only way to tell the difference is to figure out a rule that the parasites follow. It is Morty who finds the rule. Morty, the quiet kid, the one who is usually being dragged along. The one Rick calls stupid, roughly 15 times per episode, is the one who cracks the code. He notices that every single memory the family has of these new characters is a nice memory, a warm memory, a memory of someone being helpful or funny or comforting. There is no memory anywhere in the house of Uncle Steve being annoying. There is no memory of Cousin Nicky being a jerk. There is no memory of Hammer Eye saying something offensive at Thanksgiving. Every flashback is a highlight reel. But real people, Morty realizes, are not like that. Real people have done bad things to you. Real people have embarrassed you at parties. Real people have forgotten your birthday or said something rude or hurt your feelings at some point. If a person has been in your life for years and you only have good memories of them, something is wrong, because life does not work that way. Love is made of a mix, pleasure and pain, closeness and distance, the good stuff and the bad. Rick tests the rule. He looks at Morty and insults him. He calls him a stupid piece of garbage. He tells him he has millions of bad memories of Morty being a disappointment. Morty, hurt for a second, realizes this is actually proof. Rick remembers him badly. The bad memories are the real ones. Morty, genuinely, must be Rick's grandson, because Rick cannot stop being cruel to him. The family starts going around the room again, this time with a new rule. Any character with no negative memories attached to them is a parasite. And so, one by one, they start shooting. Cousin Nicky goes first. Hammer Eye goes next. The rubber ducky, the dinosaur, the pencil. Every creature the family has been welcoming for hours. Every face that smiled at them and hugged them and asked how they were doing gets shot and dissolves into pink alien goo. It is a massacre. By the end, the house is littered with bodies. The family is holding guns, breathing hard, and standing in a living room full of dead parasites. And then they kill Mr. Beauregard, the butler, the one who has been helpful all morning, the one everyone loved, gets a bullet through the chest. He dissolves into pink and disappears. And the family stands there, satisfied, thinking they have gotten everyone. Jerry, at this point, has locked himself in a closet. This is important. Jerry has been locked in a closet for most of the episode, because Jerry, for some reason, has only pleasant memories in the family. Nobody has ever been mean to him in a way they can remember. Nobody has ever been embarrassed by him. Everyone has wondered, all morning, whether Jerry himself might be a parasite. Jerry, terrified that he might actually be an alien who thinks he is a person, has agreed that he needs to stay locked away until they know for sure. Rick goes to the closet. He opens the door. He is about to shoot Jerry. And then Beth speaks up. She says she has a negative memory of Jerry. She says she remembers vividly that marrying him ruined her life. She says she remembers being stuck in a failing marriage with a man she does not love. The hatred is specific. The hatred is detailed. The hatred is real. Jerry is a real person. He has simply been such a consistent disappointment to the family that they had buried their bad memories of him under politeness. Beth's genuine resentment saves his life. The family celebrates. They think they have won. The house is full of dead parasites. Everyone left alive has at least one person in the room who has been hurt by them. The crisis is over. And then Beth points her gun at Mr. Poopy Butthole. Mr. Poopy Butthole is a character the show has been using all episode without explanation. He is a short, yellow, humanoid creature with a smile on his face, a tuxedo, and an unplaceable accent. He has been hanging around the dinner table the whole time, occasionally offering advice, getting along with everyone. The family loves him. The audience, watching along at home, has absorbed him the same way the family has. He feels like he has always been there. Beth realizes that she has no bad memories of Mr. Poopy Butthole. None. She cannot think of a single time he has annoyed her. She raises her gun. She says aloud that Mr. Poopy Butthole must be a parasite, and before anyone can stop her, she shoots him. He falls. Blood comes out. Not pink alien goo, red blood, human blood. Mr. Poopy Butthole was real. The family stares. The camera holds. The mood in the room collapses. Because Mr. Poopy Butthole was not a parasite. He was simply a friend. A genuinely nice friend who had, across years of shared meals and birthday parties and conversations, never once given anyone a reason to dislike him. Not because he was fake, because he was that good of a guy. The rule that saved the family from the parasites also killed someone the family loved. In the after-credits scene, a narrator tells us that Mr. Poopy Butthole survives his gunshot wound, slowly recovering in a hospital. He is real. He has a life. He had, it turns out, been friends with the family for many years, and they had simply never had any reason to be mad at him. The rule was a tool, and it was right about the parasites, and it was wrong about him. And a real person almost died because the tool was not perfect. This is the paradox the episode leaves you with. Memory is not trustworthy. Feelings are not trustworthy. Love is not trustworthy. The only thing you can use to tell if someone has been in your life for real is your bad memories of them. And even that rule will sometimes kill the best people you know. Think about what that actually means when you sit with it. A parasite can insert itself into your head so smoothly that you will remember it reading you bedtime stories. Your friends, your cousins, your uncles, your childhood pet. Any of them could be a creature that arrived in your living room an hour ago. And the only way you can protect yourself is by scanning your memories for every mean thing those people ever did to you. Every time they forgot your birthday. Every time they let you down. Every time they made you cry. Those are the moments that prove they are real. The warmth is not proof. The happy memories are not proof. Only the hurt is proof. The show, at this point in its run, is telling the audience that love is made of injury. That what makes a relationship real is not the pleasure of it, but the fact that the other person has had the power to hurt you and has sometimes used it. A person who has never been anything but nice to you is someone you do not really know. A person who has only ever shown you their best side has not been a person to you at all. Only the people who have scraped against your life, who have pushed and annoyed and disappointed and argued with you, are people you can trust to exist. And the creepier layer of the episode, the one that takes a while to hit, is that the memories are still there after the shooting stops. The family remembers Uncle Steve reading bedtime stories. The family remembers Mr. Beauregard being a helpful butler. The family remembers Sleepy Gary being Beth's husband. Those memories do not go away just because the people were fake. Beth still has the memory of loving Sleepy Gary. Jerry still has the memory of being close to him. Those feelings lived in them. Those feelings were real, even if the person who caused them was not. So what does that mean for the feelings? Are Beth's feelings of love for Sleepy Gary invalid because he was a worm from another planet? Are Morty's memories of Mr. Beauregard saving him from a bad night less valuable because Mr. Beauregard was never a real butler? The parasites implanted the memories, but the family felt the memories. The family lived inside them. The family laughed and cried and grew because of them. The episode does not answer this. The episode just ends. The credits roll. The family sits in the wreckage. And if you zoom out even further, the episode raises a question about the show itself. Because in every previous episode, characters like Mr. Beauregard and Uncle Steve have never existed. In every future episode, they will also not exist. Which means the audience, watching Total Rickall for the first time, spent 30 minutes getting to know characters who were both introduced and erased within the same episode. The show, for half an hour, asked its viewers to love people who were never going to matter again, and then killed them, and then never mentioned them. In a way, the audience got parasited too. The audience had false memories installed. They remember now Sleepy Gary and Mr. Beauregard as if those characters were ever real parts of the show. The show did to the viewer exactly what the parasites did to the family. And Mr. Poopy Butthole, the only survivor, has continued to appear in later seasons. He shows up at weddings, he narrates after-credit scenes, he has a wife and a child now, who the show has shown briefly. He is the one parasite-shaped character who turned out to be real, the one the family almost killed by mistake, and his continued presence in the show is a permanent, quiet reminder that the rule about bad memories nearly took someone precious away. The paradox sits underneath the show for the rest of its run. Every time the family is having a nice dinner together, a part of the audience, if they are paying attention, is doing the math. Who has been mean to whom recently? Who has had a bad moment together? Who can prove through conflict that they belong to each other? Because if the parasites ever came back, the only way to know who your family really was would be to start pointing fingers at the people you love and listing every way they have ever hurt you. Love is made of scars. That is the rule the episode leaves you with. And nobody can ever fully know, inside their own head, which of their scars were real and which were planted there by something that wanted to be loved. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. The show keeps circling this question from different directions, and in a later episode, it will come back to it through an even stranger door. A door that opens onto a world made of pixels, a game that can be played for 15 minutes in real time, but lasts an entire lifetime inside, and a woman named Marta who chooses, with full knowledge that she is not real, to live out the rest of her days inside a simulation rather than be returned to a reality that will erase her completely. Section 6. Roy. A life well lived and the paradox of simulated meaning. There is an arcade in outer space called Blips and Chits. It first appears in the second episode of Season 2, in an episode called Morty Night Run. Rick takes Morty there after doing a morally questionable job, and the arcade is filled with bright flashing lights, weird alien games, and machines that look nothing like anything on Earth. There is one game, tucked among the others, that has no flashing lights and no obvious hook. It is a large pod with a headset attached. A small sign on the side of it reads, Roy, a life well lived. Rick steers Morty toward it, laughing, and tells him to put on the helmet. Morty does, and for the next few minutes of showtime, he lives an entire human life. The helmet places Morty into a simulation. He is a child. He does not remember being Morty. He does not remember the arcade. He does not remember Rick. He is a little boy named Roy Parsons, having a nightmare on the floor of a bedroom, and his father is leaning over him, trying to comfort him. That father becomes his real father in his mind. The bedroom becomes his real bedroom. The world outside the simulation does not exist. There is only Roy and Roy's life, and everything Roy feels and believes. Roy grows up. He goes to school. He plays sports. He picks a career.
He works in a carpet store, selling rugs to customers. He meets a woman, falls in love with her, marries her, and has children with her. He raises those children. They grow up. He becomes an older man. His hair turns gray. His wife ages with him. He deals with a diagnosis of cancer, and then, slowly, beats it. He goes back to work. He keeps selling carpets. And then, at the age of 55, while reaching for something on a high shelf in the carpet store, he has a heart attack and dies on the floor. The helmet comes off. Morty is back at the arcade. Rick is standing there, laughing at him, telling him he scored poorly because he should have lived longer. Morty stands there, blinking, with the weight of an entire lifetime of memories pressing down on him. He remembers his wife. He remembers his children. He remembers the small, boring moments of 55 years of being a person named Roy. The simulation has ended. The man is gone.
And yet, every detail of that man's life is still in Morty's head because Morty lived it. That alone is enough to sit with for a long time, but the show does not leave it there. Rick pushes Morty aside and puts the helmet on himself. The screen shows the beginning again. A child having a nightmare. A father leaning in. The game restarts with Rick in the driver's seat. And Rick, being Rick, takes Roy's life in a very different direction. Within seconds of game time, Rick has Roy leaving home. Rick skips school. Rick has Roy drop out, leave town, and head for the mountains. Rick is not trying to score well by keeping Roy alive. Rick is trying to break the game. The world of Roy starts showing signs that it cannot handle what Rick is doing, because no previous player has tried to escape the edges of the simulation. Rick keeps pushing. A bystander at the arcade watches the screen in horror as Rick's version of Roy is chased by police, goes off the grid, and eventually disappears into parts of the game map the designers probably did not build out. The show frames this as a joke about Rick being better than Morty at everything, including video games. But there is a detail in the episode that matters more than the joke. According to Rick, the game runs at a specific speed. 1 second in the real world is about 1 month inside the simulation. An average human life of about 80 years takes, from start to finish, roughly 15 minutes in real time. So Morty lived 55 years in about 7 or 8 minutes. The bystanders watching the screen at the arcade saw a little boy grow up, get married, grow old, and die in less time than it takes to microwave a bag of popcorn. That detail sits quietly in the corner of the audience's mind for about 7 years, and then the show comes back to it. In Season 6, Episode 2, titled Rick a Mort Well Lived, the show returns to the Roy game. Rick, Morty, and Summer are back at Blips and Chits when alien terrorists attack the arcade. In the middle of the fight, the power flickers, and the Roy machine experiences a glitch. Morty is inside the game at the moment it happens. The glitch scrambles the game's software, and when the dust settles, something has gone wrong with Morty's mind inside the simulation. Rick, analyzing the damage from outside the machine, realizes what has happened. Morty is no longer Roy. Morty is no longer a single character inside the game. Morty's consciousness has been split and scattered across every single non-player character in the entire world of the simulation. There are, according to Rick, 5 billion of these characters. Every random person walking down the street in the game, every shopkeeper, every kid in school, every person sitting in a waiting room, every driver passing by on the highway, all 5 billion of them now contain a tiny fragment of Morty's mind without knowing it. They go on with their lives, buying groceries, arguing with their spouses, raising their children, and none of them has any idea that they are all the same person, split into pieces. Rick, to save him, has to go into the game himself. He puts on the helmet and becomes Roy. And this time, Rick plays Roy not to break the game, but to save his grandson. His plan is simple. He is going to stand up in front of the entire simulated world and convince them, one at a time and then all at once, that they are not real. That they are fragments of a boy named Morty who is lying in a coma in an arcade in outer space. That the only way to wake up is to accept that they are not people, that they are pieces of a person, and that if they all agree to this, their consciousness will snap back together and Morty will wake up whole. This turns into one of the strangest plots the show has ever built, because Rick, dressed as Roy, cannot just announce what is happening. He has to convince billions of individual people to stop being themselves. He tries speeches, he tries public demonstrations, he tries flying to prove he has powers the rest of them do not. Some people listen, most do not. The ones who listen form a movement, a group that calls itself by different names across the episode, but which the news eventually starts calling a doomsday cult. Ordinary people shave their heads, they change their clothes, they leave their families to follow Roy out into the desert, because Roy is telling them that none of them are real, that their lives do not matter, that their children are not actual children, their love is not actual love, their work is not actual work. They are all just pieces of a confused teenager who is about to wake up. The rest of the world pushes back. Armies form. Governments intervene. Religious leaders debate what is happening on television. Some people point out that what Roy is saying is objectively true, if you accept the science of it. Other people point out that even if it is true, it does not matter, because the lives they are living feel real, and that should be enough. The simulation starts tearing itself apart, because 5 billion tiny Mortys are starting to notice the strings holding their world together, and some of them want to cut the strings, while others want to leave them alone. In the middle of all this, one character emerges who makes the episode hurt. Her name is Marta. She is a young Jewish woman in the simulation, and she becomes one of Roy's earliest and most devoted followers. She understands what he is saying. She grasps, faster than most, that she is a fragment of Morty. She helps Roy convert others. She argues on his behalf. She is the person who, more than anyone else, explains to other people in the simulation what is really going on. Rick, playing Roy, grows close to her. The two of them have long conversations about identity, about meaning, about whether being a fragment of someone else's mind is better or worse than being nothing at all. And at the end of the episode, when Rick has finally convinced the bulk of the simulated population to board ships and fly outside the edges of the game map, causing the final reset that will pull Morty's consciousness back together, Marta asks Rick to let her stay behind. She understands the full situation. She knows the ships will trigger the reset. She knows that when Morty wakes up, she will cease to exist as a separate person. Her mind will be reabsorbed. She will be gone. She looks at Rick and asks, quietly, if she can live out the rest of her life inside the game, alone, in a broken simulation, with no other people, because everyone else will have left on the ships. Rick agrees. The ships fly off, the population vanishes. Morty wakes up in the arcade, and Marta, the one character who chose to stay, is left behind inside the empty game with no other residence and no way out. The show implies she will live there, in that empty world, for the rest of whatever lifespan a simulated person gets, alone by choice. Think about what Marta actually chose. She chose a life she knows is not real, over a non-existence that might be more real. She knew, with complete clarity, that her mind was not her own. She knew that everything she had felt, every love, every memory, every moment of joy, had been generated by a piece of a boy trapped in a headset. And she still decided that the feelings were enough, that a simulated life, even a lonely one, was worth more than returning to the thing she was supposed to be, which was a small, unaware piece of someone else's brain. The paradox the episode leaves you with is genuine and heavy. If a life feels real from the inside and contains love and meaning and loss and growth, does it matter if the person living it is made of code? Morty, in the first Roy game, lived 55 years. He came back with the memories of a wife and children. Were those decades fake? The wife is obviously a program. The children are obviously programs. But the grief Morty might feel when remembering them years later is the grief of a person who spent 5.5 decades loving them. Is the grief a real grief if the love was for pixels? The episode pushes the question further with Marta, because Marta knows. Marta has been told the truth, and Marta still refuses to leave, which means her answer to the question is that simulation or not, the life is enough. The meaning is made by living, not by being made of real material. If you felt it, it was yours. This argument cuts both directions. If the life inside Roy is real enough that Marta gets to keep hers, then what does that say about the life outside Roy? Rick lives in a multiverse where every version of every event is already happening in some other world. Morty has already been replaced at least once. The family has been parasited, cloned, decoyed, scattered, and stitched back together across 7 seasons. How sure can any of them be that their memories, their friendships, their small daily moments are any more real than Marta's? The game inside the arcade is running on software. The universe inside the show is running on something. Neither of them them is obviously the more true one, and the show does not pretend to resolve this. Rick walks out of the arcade with Morty. The game is destroyed in the battle. Marta is gone. The episode ends with a joke, but the question remains sitting there, in the shape of a woman who chose a fake life knowing it was fake, because the fakeness was not the thing that mattered about it. What mattered was that it was hers. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. The same question, though, gets put to a much harder test when the person facing it is not a pixel at all, when she is, by every measurable standard, a full human being. When she is walking around her house, hugging her children, sleeping next to her husband, waking up in the morning feeling completely certain about who she is. And when the possibility exists, sitting quietly inside her own mind, that everything she feels is being felt by a copy of herself who has no way to ever know the difference. Section 7. Edge of Morty and the paradox of trying to reach a prophesied death. The episode that opens season 4 of Rick and Morty is called Edge of Morty. Rick, Die, Rick, Pete. It aired in November of 2019, and the cold open of the episode is the first real moment of the season. The show had been off the air for about 2 years. Fans had been waiting. And what the show came back with, after all that time, was an adventure that starts as a simple treasure hunt and ends with one of the most brutal emotional punches the show has ever delivered. Rick wakes Morty up and tells him they are going on an adventure. The destination is a distant planet called Forbagilon Prime. The mission is to collect something called death crystals. Rick, on the ship ride over, explains what they are. A death crystal is a small, clear stone. If you hold it in your hand, the crystal shows you every possible way you could die. Every future version of your death laid out like a menu. Rick warns Morty to be careful with them because, as Rick puts it, your future comes from your present, and if you are alive and doing things, the number of possible deaths is huge. Touch the crystal, and all of them flood in at once. They get to the planet. It is cold and rocky. They start mining, and almost immediately, a group of other aliens shows up, calling themselves crystal poachers, and a gunfight starts. Rick, quick on his feet, tapes a sliver of death crystal to his own forehead. He uses it as a kind of cheat code. Every time he starts to move, he can see the version of the next few seconds in which he dies. If ducking behind a rock leads to a vision of him getting shot in the head, he moves differently. If standing up leads to a vision of him being fine, he stands up. He uses the crystal as a way to make every choice lead to living. Morty, watching this, pockets a crystal of his own, and this is where the paradox of the episode starts. Morty touches his crystal. The visions hit him. He sees himself dying in dozens of different ways. Getting shot, getting stabbed, falling down a manhole, having an elevator close on his neck and cut his head off, burning, drowning, being eaten. Every possible bad end for a 14-year-old boy shows up at once. But buried in those visions, tucked among the ugly ones, is a single vision that is different, a peaceful one. Morty sees himself as an old man, white-haired, lying in a comfortable bed. The light is soft. An elderly woman is sitting beside him, holding his hand, stroking his hair, comforting him as he slips away. And Morty recognizes her. The elderly woman is wearing a necklace. The necklace matches one that Morty has seen in a photograph earlier that morning. In the photograph, Jessica, his lifelong crush, was wearing that same necklace because it had been passed down to her from her grandmother. The old woman in the death vision is, as far as Morty can tell, Jessica, grown old, sitting at his deathbed, comforting him in his final moments. Morty decides, right there on the planet, that this is the death he is going to have. And the paradox of this decision needs to be explained carefully because the logic of it is what breaks Morty for the rest of the episode. The rule of the crystal, as Rick explained it, is that your future comes from your present. The deaths you see are not fixed. They are versions. Each one is the result of a possible path you might walk. If you change what you do, different deaths become likely, and others become unlikely. The crystal is not a fortune teller. It is a weather map. It shows you what is probably coming based on what you are currently doing, and it updates constantly as you make choices. So if Morty wants the Jessica death, he has to steer his life toward the version of the path that leads there. Every time he makes a choice, he has to check the crystal. If his current action makes the Jessica future fade, he has to pick a different action. If it makes the Jessica future stronger, he keeps going. He is, in effect, letting the crystal drive him. He becomes a passenger in his own life, with the crystal pointing him toward the one outcome he wants. On the ride home from Forbagilon Prime, Morty starts using the crystal to steer. Rick is flying the ship. Morty, watching the Jessica future in his hand, realizes that Rick flying the ship leads away from the Jessica future. So Morty tries to take the controls. He fights Rick. He grabs the steering. The ship swerves. It crashes. And in the crash, Rick gets thrown thrown through the windshield, impaled on a rock, and dies. This is 5 minutes into the episode. Rick is dead. Morty killed him. A backup system kicks in. Before Rick died, he had installed a kind of emergency safety net that would copy his consciousness into a clone body in another dimension if his main body was ever destroyed. So Rick wakes up in a clone of himself in a different universe and starts trying to get home. But the universe he wakes up in is run by Nazis, and Rick gets killed there almost immediately. The clone system activates again. He wakes up in another universe. That one is also fascist. He dies there too. The episode cuts back and forth between Morty on Earth, steering his life with the crystal, and Rick bouncing from one nightmare reality to the next, constantly dying and respawning in worse and worse places, trying to get back to his grandson. A hologram of Rick appears beside Morty, projected from the ship's systems, begging Morty to make a clone out of Rick's corpse and bring him back. Morty refuses. The hologram explains how simple it would be. Just a little DNA, just a small process. Morty will be able to save his grandfather and go home. Morty looks at the crystal. The Jessica future darkens when he thinks about saving Rick, so he does not save Rick. He drives away, leaving his grandfather's body on the side of a road, because saving him does not match the future he wants. Back on Earth, Morty keeps following the crystal. The crystal tells him to go to school. He goes to school. The crystal tells him that confronting some bullies leads to a better chance of the Jessica future. He confronts the bullies. The situation escalates. The bullies push back. The crystal shows Morty that he has to become more powerful to survive this, which means getting weapons. So Morty goes to Rick's garage and takes weapons. Powerful ones. The kind Rick has told him never to touch. He also takes a handful of Mr. Meeseek's boxes, the devices that summon magical blue creatures who will do any task you ask of them until the task is done. Morty uses the weapons. He uses the Meeseeks. He takes on the bullies, and then the police, and then the army. He allows himself to be captured because the crystal tells him capture leads somewhere better. In court, facing a serious prison sentence, he looks into the crystal and sees that a specific sequence of words will save him. Those words turn out to be the dying words of the judge's dead husband. Morty recites them aloud, in court with the judge on the bench. The judge, in shock, collapses and eventually takes her own life off screen. Morty walks out free. He is a monster by this point. He has hurt people. He has killed people. He has wrecked his city. He is living inside a trance, eyes fixed on the crystal, watching the Jessica future carefully to make sure he has not strayed from the path. And every action he takes, every terrible thing he does, is justified in his head because it leads toward the one future he has decided he is going to have. The old man, the bed, the woman with the necklace. Rick, finally, makes his way back through the multiverse. He finds a universe with wasp people in it, where a version of himself is a wasp. That wasp Rick, friendlier than most other versions, helps the real Rick get back to Earth and restore him to his human body. Rick, exhausted and furious, tracks down Morty. Morty, by this point, has fused himself with a glowing substance that turns him into a giant cyborg monster the size of a building. He has done it because the crystal told him the Jessica future required him to become powerful. Rick fights him, separates him from the crystal, and the spell breaks. Morty comes back to himself. The city is destroyed. He has done damage he will never fix, but he is alive, and he still has a path ahead of him. And the episode would be a complete tragedy if it ended there. It does not end there. There is one more scene, a short scene, after the credits. Morty walks past a hallway at school. Jessica is standing there, talking to a friend. She is talking about her future, about what she wants to be when she grows up. She says she has always been drawn to older people. She talks about her grandmother, who just passed away. She says she loved sitting with her grandmother in the final weeks, holding her hand, being there for her, making her feel less afraid. Jessica says that is the career she wants. She wants to become a hospice worker. She wants to spend her life sitting at the bedsides of dying people, comforting them, holding their hands, helping them let go peacefully. Morty hears this and understands everything. The Jessica in the Death Vision was not his wife. The Jessica in the Death Vision was not his lover. The Jessica in the Death Vision was not anyone he had won, or married, or built a life with. The Jessica in the Death Vision was simply Jessica doing her job. She comforts dying old people. That is what she does. Morty, in the vision, was just another dying old man, and Jessica happened to be the hospice worker assigned to his care. There was never a romantic future. Jessica was never going to love him. The vision showed him a peaceful death because hospice deaths are often peaceful. And Jessica was in the vision because Jessica comforts dying people professionally. And the necklace was in the vision because Jessica was wearing her grandmother's necklace as she worked. That was the entire future. A kind stranger at a deathbed. Morty had torn apart his life, betrayed his grandfather, killed people, ruined a city, and nearly destroyed himself to chase a future in which he was going to be alone in a bed with a woman he barely knew. knew, dying the same way anyone else might die in hospice care. The paradox of the episode is the trap Morty walked into, and it is a trap the crystal was technically not responsible for. The crystal did not lie. The crystal showed him a real future. The vision of the old man and Jessica with the necklace was a genuine possible ending for Morty's life. The trap was that Morty saw a peaceful death with a familiar face and decided that meant love. His own wish for her, projected onto a simple image, filled in a whole story that was never there. He saw what he wanted to see. And the deeper twist of the paradox is that by chasing the vision, he made himself into someone Jessica would never have chosen to be with, even if the vision had meant what he thought. He lied, he stole, he hurt people. He became the kind of person who would drive a crashed ship past his own grandfather's corpse and feel justified. Every step he took toward the future he wanted made him into a person less and less deserving of it. And even if his reading of the vision had been correct, the boy in the vision was not the boy he was becoming. The boy in the vision was peaceful and loved. The boy on the path with a criminal with a crystal strapped to his hand. A future you can see is not a future you are guaranteed to reach. A future you try too hard to reach will usually twist into something else before you get there. And a vision of comfort, glimpsed from too far away, can be misread badly enough to wreck the life of the person doing the looking. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. This becomes the first real taste of a much bigger question the show will keep pulling at. The question of what happens when a person cannot tell whether the thing they are looking at is the thing itself, or just a copy of the thing, or a clue about the thing, or nothing at all. And the sharpest version of that question is sitting at the dining room table in the Smith house, pouring wine, smiling at her family, completely unable to say for certain, even to herself, whether the daughter her father made is the one who ended up living in this house. Section 8. The ABCs of Beth and the unanswerable question of which Beth is real. Beth Smith is, by the third season of the show, the quiet center of the Smith family. Morty gets most of the screen time. Rick gets most of the lines. Summer and Jerry provide most of the comedy. But Beth, the horse surgeon with the dead mother and the absent father who came back after 30 years, is the person the whole family rotates around. She is the reason Rick is in the house. She is the reason Morty exists. She is the person whose quiet anger and quiet love hold the story together without ever being shown off. The 9th episode of season 3, called The ABCs of Beth, is the episode where the show finally gives her the spotlight. It aired in September of 2017, and by the time it ends, the show has planted a puzzle inside Beth's head that she will never be able to solve, and that the audience will never be able to solve either. The episode starts with a mystery from Beth's childhood. A boy named Tommy Lipnip, a friend of Beth's when she was young, has been missing for decades. His father has been on death row for years, wrongly convicted of killing him. Beth, hearing about the case on the news, realizes that she knows where Tommy is. When Beth was a little girl, her father Rick built her a special, private world as a toy. He called it Fruipyland. It was a colorful fantasy land full of friendly creatures, candy trees, and soft rainbow skies. Beth used to play there as a child, and on one visit, many years ago, Beth pushed Tommy off a cliff and left him stranded there. She never told anyone. She had almost forgotten about it. Rick and Beth go back into Fruipyland to rescue Tommy. What they find is not a rescue. Tommy has survived inside Fruipyland for decades. Fruipyland is peaceful on the outside, but savage underneath its surface. And Tommy has spent his whole life there, doing horrible things to stay alive. He refuses to come home. Rick takes a small piece of Tommy instead, and uses it to grow a clone that they can bring back to the real world to free Tommy's father from prison. That is the plot of the episode on the surface. But the real subject of the episode is Beth herself. Because as Rick and Beth travel through Fruipyland, the truth about her childhood starts spilling out. Beth was not a nice child. Beth was, in fact, a disturbing child. She did terrible things to animals. She did cruel things to other kids. Her friend Tommy got pushed off a cliff because Beth wanted to, because she was that kind of girl. Rick, who raised her during those years, knew what she was. That is why he built Fruipyland in the first place. He did not build it as a gift. He built it as a place to keep his daughter busy and away from other children so that she could not hurt them. Fruipyland was a cage with candy trees. Beth, now an adult, sits with this information, and something in her clicks into place. She has always felt different. She has always felt angry in a way she could not explain. She has always felt smarter than the people around her, and meaner, and more alone. And now she understands. She is not broken because of anything that happened to her. She is like this because she was born like this. She is her father's daughter. The cruelty is simply in her the way it is simply in him. She she is Rick in a smaller and more quiet body, doing horse surgery instead of universe jumping because the multiverse was never offered to her. Rick, for the first time in the series, sees her for what she is, and he makes her an offer. He offers to build her a clone. The offer is specific. Rick explains that he can grow a perfect copy of Beth. The clone will have every one of her memories. The clone will have every one of her habits, her skills, her voice, her body.
The clone will walk into the Smith house tomorrow morning and continue her life as if nothing has changed. Jerry will not know. The kids will not know. Nobody will know. The clone will cook and work and raise Morty and Summer and live the life Beth is currently living. And Beth, the real Beth, will be free. She can get in a spaceship. She can fly out into the universe. She can do whatever she wants. Adventure, discovery, revenge, anything. She can come back someday, swap places with the clone, and nobody will have lost a thing. It is the perfect escape hatch, offered to her by the only person who knows she has been secretly wanting it her entire life. Beth has to choose. The camera does not show us her choice. Beth says something to Rick. The show cuts away before we hear what she says. Rick responds. We do not hear it. The episode moves on, and when we see Beth again, she is home, and she is warmer than usual, and she makes up with Jerry in a way she has not in years.
The season ends with Beth and Jerry getting back together, and the audience, watching all of this, has no idea whether the Beth who reconciled with Jerry is the real Beth who decided to stay, or the clone who walked in while the real Beth left for the stars. That ambiguity, on its own, would already be a strong ending, but the show goes further. In the next episode, the season 3 finale, called The Rickchurian Morty Date, Beth has an on-screen mental breakdown about whether she is a clone. She paces around the house, she confronts Rick, she accuses him of maybe having replaced her. Rick, being Rick, neither confirms nor denies it. He acts annoyed, he deflects, he tells her it does not matter. The episode ends without an answer. And then, the show lets years pass without resolving it. Finally, at the end of season 4, in the finale called Star Mort Rickturn of the Jerry, the show brings back another Beth. This second Beth has been out in space for years, leading a rebellion against the Galactic Federation. She is muscular, she is scarred, she is a warrior. The fans start calling her Space Beth, and Space Beth and Home Beth, the two of them together for the first time, confront each other and confront Rick. Which of them is the original? Which of them is the clone? Rick admits, finally, what happened in the garage. Beth, when he offered her the choice, did not choose. She threw the question back to him. She told him to decide. She said that if Rick wanted his daughter to stay, she would stay. If he did not, she would go. She put the decision in her father's hands, because that was the question she had been asking him her whole life. Do you want me here? Rick, unable to answer that question, did something sneakier. He made the clone. He put both Beths in sleep pods. He shuffled them. He erased the labels. He told one of them that she had chosen to stay home, and he told the other that she had chosen to go to space. And crucially, Rick made sure that he himself did not know which one was which. Then he set them both loose to live the lives he had assigned them, which means neither Beth knows what she is, and neither does Rick, and neither does the audience, and neither does the show. Both Beths remember the entire life that led up to the clone moment. Both Beths remember being children. Both Beths remember Fruppyland. Both Beths remember marrying Jerry, giving birth to Summer, giving birth to Morty, being disappointed in her father, fighting with her husband, drinking wine in the kitchen on bad nights. There is no memory anywhere that one Beth has and the other does not. Their pasts are identical. Their feelings are identical. Their sense of being Beth is identical. And the puzzle the show leaves you with is a genuinely hard one, because the usual way people think about copies is that there is an original and then there is a copy made later. The original is the real one. The copy is the fake one. Even if the copy is identical in every way, we tend to say that the original has something the copy does not, some priority that came from being first. But in the case of the two Beths, there was a moment in Rick's lab when they were both alive at the same time, in sleep pods, with identical memories, identical bodies, and identical claims to being Beth. From that moment onward, neither of them is the original in any meaningful sense. The shuffle erased the distinction. There is no physical test, no mental test, no spiritual test that could sort them out. They are, functionally, two instances of the same person, walking forward in time from the same single starting point. The word original, in this case, has no meaning. That is the real paradox of the episode. Not who is the real Beth. That question is unanswerable, and the show knows it. The real paradox is that the question stops making sense. The idea of a real self, an original version, a true one, relies on there being a way to tell that self apart from any copy. Erase that way, and the idea collapses. Both are the real one. Neither is the real one. Both statements are equally true. Both statements are equally meaningless. Beth has to live with this for the rest of the show. Every Every morning, when she wakes up, there is a voice inside her that cannot be silenced. Am I the one who chose to stay? Am I the one who was made to feel like she chose to stay?
Am I the one who got the life I wanted? Or am I a second best copy of that person, raised to think I got what I wanted, so I would not look too closely? And no evidence she can gather will ever answer the question, because both Beths have every piece of evidence that she has. The show, to its credit, does not treat this as tragic. Both Beths eventually meet each other. They become a team. They save the family together. They find, in each other, something closer to peace than either of them had alone, because only the other one knows what it is to live inside this unanswerable question. Space Beth spends time at the house. Home Beth spends time in space. They are, in a sense, a single person split across two lives, and each half has what the other half is missing. But the question never closes. It simply gets lived with. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. And the show, of course, cannot leave a good paradox alone. Because if Rick can make one clone of Beth so convincing that even she cannot tell she is a clone, there is no logical reason he has to stop at one. There is no rule saying the next time the family is in danger, Rick will not try the same trick, only bigger. Dozens of times, hundreds of times, copies of copies, hidden in houses across the country, none of them knowing they are copies, all of them certain that they are the real thing, all of them ready to fight for it. Section 9. Mortiplicity and the Infinite Regress. Paradox of Decoys. Mortiplicity is the second episode of Season 5 of Rick and Morty. It aired in June of 2021. The title is a play on the movie Multiplicity, a 1996 comedy where Michael Keaton plays a man who clones himself so many times that the clones start making their own clones. That movie is the seed of the episode. But Rick and Morty, being Rick and Morty, takes a silly premise and turns it into one of the bleakest and most philosophically heavy half hours the show has ever produced. The word decoy is said in the episode about 77 times. By the end, that word has lost all its meaning, and that loss of meaning is the whole point. The episode starts the way a normal Rick and Morty episode starts. The Smith family is having breakfast. Rick announces that today they are going to kill God. He says God is real and sleeping, and the two of them are going to sneak up into the clouds to end him. Beth mentions that Jerry is getting a job. Rick almost immediately notices something is off. The comment about Jerry working does not fit. The moment feels wrong, and before anyone can say another word, the window breaks. Armed, squid-shaped aliens crash into the house and shoot every single member of the Smith family in the head. Rick, Morty, Summer, Beth, and Jerry, all dead on the kitchen floor within seconds of the episode starting. The camera cuts away. In another house, many miles away, a watch on Rick's wrist beeps. A different Rick with a different Morty, a different Summer, a different Beth, and a different Jerry reads the alarm. One of the decoy families has been killed. That is the reveal. The Smith family that died in the first scene was not the real family. It was a copy Rick had built. Rick explains in that second house what has been happening. After the events of the previous season, Rick has become aware that enemies across the universe want to hunt him down. To protect the real family, he has created backup families. Fake Ricks, fake Mortys, fake Beths, fake Summers, fake Jerrys. Each copy is placed in a different house in a different state. Each one believes completely that they are the real family. They cook meals, they go to work, they love each other. They have no idea that they are decoys. And when enemies come for the Smiths, those enemies find and kill a decoy family, believing they have won, and the real family stays safe. That is the plan. That is the setup. That is supposed to be where the episode's puzzle ends, but within about 2 minutes, the puzzle gets bigger. Because the second Rick, the one sitting in the second house, is also a decoy. He does not know it yet. And soon, in the middle of watching a television show with his decoy Morty, his house is attacked too. Before they die, they realize something is wrong. Their decoy alarm had gone off, but the alarm was supposed to be for monitoring the decoys that they, as the real family, had set up. If they are being attacked, they cannot be the real ones. They are also decoys. The third Rick, in a third house, figures it out. Every decoy Rick, not knowing he is a decoy, built his own batch of decoys to protect himself. Every copy became a copy maker, and every copy made by a copy then assumed it was the original and made its own copies to protect itself. The number of Smith families across the country is no longer 5 or 10 or 50. It is in the hundreds, maybe more. Somewhere, in some house, a real Rick once made decoys. Each of those decoys made decoys. Each of those decoys made decoys. The chain keeps going. Rick calls this an Asimov cascade, named after the science fiction writer Isaac Asimov, whose robots had rules about protecting themselves that, if applied wrong, could spiral out forever. The episode spends
spends the rest of its runtime following different Smith families, each one convinced it is the real one, each one slowly realizing it is not. Some of the decoys react well, some react badly. A group of them form a wooden version Smith family, slightly off-looking, more peaceful, who want all the decoys to survive together. A different group of decoys form a militant faction that wants to hunt down every other decoy until only one Smith family remains. Another group of decoys, heavily degraded because they are decoys made by decoys made by decoys, barely even look like people anymore. There is a scarecrow Rick. There is a Rick made of glockenspiels,
a small musical instrument with metal bars. There is a Rick with no skin, kept alive by tubes, tortured and raving. Each step further down the chain, the decoys get worse, sloppier, less complete. The first decoys Rick built were perfect. The decoys those decoys built were slightly off. The decoys those decoys built were worse. By the time the chain gets deep enough, the decoys are barely functional people. Some of them do not speak correctly. Some of them have the wrong colors. Some of them forget they have children. The whole country, unknown to anyone in the real world, is dotted with houses full of broken copies of the same 5 people, all certain they are the real ones, all trying to kill each other. The squid aliens that started everything turn out to also be decoys. At some point, somewhere along the chain, a Smith family built squid aliens to be the enemies that would attack the decoy families. Those squid aliens are, themselves, fake. They are doing their job. They are killing decoys, but they are not an outside threat. They are part of the same spiraling system. Everybody is decoy. Everybody is attacker. Everybody is protecting nobody, because there is no real family at the center of any of it. And the question the episode keeps pushing into the foreground is the one that gets more uncomfortable the longer you sit with it. At what point does a copy stop being the thing it is a copy of? The first generation decoys are, physically and mentally, indistinguishable from the real family. They have the same memories. They have the same love for each other. They have the same fears, the same jokes, the same inside references. If the real Smith family died in a car accident tomorrow, one of the first generation decoys could walk into the house, take over, and nobody in the world would ever know. They are, by every measurable test, the Smith family. Only a technical definition, the fact that they were built later, keeps them out of that category, but the second generation decoys are slightly off. Not in their hearts, not in their feelings, just in small details. A word said wrong, a memory slightly warped, an emotion dialed one notch too high. They still love each other. They still think of themselves as the Smiths, and to a stranger walking in off the street, they would pass. The third generation is more off. The fourth is more off. The fifth is a scarecrow. The 10th is a pile of splinters with a face. Somewhere in the middle of that chain, the thing being copied stops being the Smith family in any recognizable way. But each copy, along the way, believed completely that it was still them. Each copy lived its life. Each copy loved its wife, its kids, its father, its grandson. Each copy had a real inner experience of being the Smith family, right up until the moment another copy came through the window and shot it in the head. And if the copies far down the chain are not the Smith family anymore, but the ones higher up still are, then somewhere in that chain there is a line. A specific generation where being the Smith family stops. The episode never tells you where that line is. It implies, very strongly, that there is no line. That being the Smith family is a thing that gradually wears off across copies, the way a photocopy of a photocopy of a photocopy gets blurry. Nobody can point to the exact photocopy where it became too blurry to read, but at some point it did. The real family, it turns out, was not in any of those houses. The real family had been in space the whole episode. They had been picking up Space Beth and dealing with a different problem entirely. While the Asimov cascade was tearing itself apart across the country, the real Smiths were out of frame, alive and well, completely unaware that hundreds of copies of themselves were slaughtering each other in farmhouses and suburban homes. When the real Rick gets back to Earth, he sees the alerts on his watch. His decoy families have all died. Every single one. He shrugs. He tells his family it is not important. They have dinner. And the episode, which started with a promise that the family would kill God, ends without the family having done anything meaningful at all. God is not killed. The squid aliens are all gone. The decoys are all dead. The real family is safe. The plan worked, technically. The decoys absorbed the violence. That was their job. The paradox that Mortiplicity plants inside the show is about the nature of identity at scale. Rick's habit of making copies of people, which started small with the Beth clone, has now grown into a system that creates and destroys sentient lives by the dozen, with no one ever keeping track. Every one of those decoys was a person. Every one of those decoys had
had feelings, opinions, love for their children, memories of their wedding, fears about the future, and every single one of them was grown in a machine, placed in a house, and allowed to live without knowing they were decoys. They were people by every standard that matters. They simply were not first. The episode does not mourn them. The show does not mourn them. Rick certainly does not mourn them. And that is part of the horror of it. Because if a life can be made and destroyed this cheaply, and if the difference between a real person and a decoy is nothing more than which one was built first, then the entire idea of a real person starts to shake under the weight of the question. Think about what this means for the other copies we have already met. The two Beths, the dead Rick and Morty buried in the backyard, the Mortys killed every time the save point button was pressed. All of them are part of the same pattern.
The universe of the show produces copies the way factories produce cars. Most of those copies die without ever being given a real story. They are background. They are decoys for somebody else's plot. They are the people the show does not follow. And in a show built on the idea that every possibility is happening somewhere, the paradox of multiplicity is the final twist of that knife. If every possibility is happening, then you are, statistically, probably a copy. The chance that you are the original, the one true version of yourself, is almost zero. There are far more copies than originals in any system where copies make copies. And the only thing keeping the idea of a real you standing up is that you, yourself, have no way to check. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. That question, the question of whether the viewer has any more claim to being real than a decoy Smith in a farmhouse in Iowa, gets pulled into the open in the strangest way the show has ever done it. Because the next paradox is not about a character inside the show doubting reality. The next paradox is about the show itself doubting whether any of what the audience has been watching was ever really happening at all. Section 10. Never Ricking Morty and the Paradox of a Show That Knows It Exists. Never Ricking Morty is the 6th episode of Season 4 of Rick and Morty. It aired in May of 2020. It came after a long break in the middle of the 4th season. The show had been teasing serious storylines. Fans had been waiting for answers about evil Morty, about Rick's past, about the Citadel, about Diane, about the 100 little mysteries the show had been planting since the pilot. The episode was marketed like it might finally deliver some of those answers. What it delivered instead was a 30-minute argument with the audience about whether any of the previous 4 seasons had ever mattered at all. The episode opens with Rick and Morty waking up on a train. Neither of them remembers how they got there. The train is speeding through the countryside. The train cars are full of characters, some of them familiar from previous episodes, some of them completely new. A man in a uniform announces stops. Something feels wrong from the first second. And as Rick and Morty walk through the train, moving from car to car, they realize what is happening. The train is not a train. The train is a device for telling stories. Each car contains a different kind of story, with different characters and different situations. And as Rick and Morty walk through, they get pulled into each story one at a time. In one car, they are cowboys. In another, they are in a murder mystery on a boat. In another, Morty is asked to tell a story that would pass a specific test for how women are written in fiction. The test is a real one, called the Bechdel test, and Morty tries to meet it but keeps failing in embarrassing ways. Rick eventually figures out that they are inside a literal storytelling machine. He explains to Morty that the train is a physical object that makes stories happen. Everything they are experiencing is scripted. Every line is dialogue. Every conflict is a plot point being forced on them by the machine itself. And who is running the machine is revealed not long after. A villain named Story Lord, a tall, well-dressed man voiced by the actor Paul Giamatti, appears at the front of the train. Story Lord has captured Rick and Morty because they are, according to him, two of the most valuable storytelling minds in the universe. Every adventure they go on generates story energy. Every joke, every emotional moment, every unresolved plotline, every fight, all of it builds up inside them like fuel. Story Lord has trapped them on the train in order to pull all of that story energy out of them by force and use it to escape from the prison that contains him. That prison is the key piece. Story Lord is not a character in the world of Rick and Morty. Story Lord is a character trapped inside fiction itself, and he wants out. He wants to break out of stories entirely. He wants to escape into reality, into the place where the audience watches from. Rick, at one point, straight out tells Morty this. The train is a literary device, a physical object that represents the shape of a story. The whole thing, Rick says, is meta. The word meta here simply means a story that is aware it is a story, and that is talking to the audience about the fact that it is a story. Rick and Morty, to escape, have to beat the machine, and the way Rick beats the machine is the
strangest moment in the episode and possibly in the show's whole run. Rick explains that every good story follows a shape, a beginning, a middle, an end, a problem, a struggle, a resolution. That shape was made famous by the show's own creator, Dan Harmon, who teaches writers to use a specific version of it called the story circle. The train, as Rick figures out, is designed to run characters through that exact circle. Every car is a different step in the shape. So Rick decides to cheat. He uses his knowledge of the story circle to run through the shape as fast as possible, skipping steps, telling the train that they have already done what the train wants them to do. He weaponizes the idea of story itself against the machine. The train, understanding that it is being manipulated, fights back. The fight scenes that follow are absurd. A ticket collector grows to the size of a bodybuilder. Story Lord grows even bigger. The characters get sucked out of windows into what Rick calls the non-canon space around the train, a kind of nothing zone outside of any story. When characters fall into that zone,
They stop being real. They stop being characters. They are just bodies floating outside of fiction. At the climax of the episode, Rick and Morty are captured, strapped to a machine, and Story Lord begins extracting their story energy. The extraction pulls future plot lines out of them. The audience gets glimpses of unresolved arcs. Evil Morty appears, leading an army made up of every hinted and half-developed character the show had been teasing for years. Tammy and Bird Person are there. The Meeseeks are there. Every possible climax to every possible storyline gets crammed into a few seconds of visuals as Story Lord drains them like a battery. It is a parody of exactly the kind of ending fans had been begging for. Every loose thread pulled together in one massive final battle. And the show makes it all non-canon on purpose. None of those scenes are happening. None of those scenes will ever happen. They are being shown only so Story Lord can steal the energy behind them. Rick, running out of options, does the one thing Story Lord did not expect. He reaches into a deep part of his mind. He pulls out a real memory, a true one. He shows Story Lord a private moment he has never shared with anyone. The memory is quiet, simple. It shows Rick as a younger man, standing in a sunny kitchen, holding a baby boy who is Morty. His wife Diane is beside him. She looks at the baby. She looks at Rick. She says the words, "He is just like you." The memory is so real, so pure, so full of genuine, unfiltered love that Story Lord's machine cannot process it. The machine chokes. The machine breaks. Rick and Morty fight their way out. They defeat Story Lord. They escape the train. And in the final moments of the episode, the show pulls its biggest trick. The entire train turns out to have been a children's toy. Morty had bought it at the Citadel of Rick's as a gift for Rick. It is a small plastic model train. The adventure they had, the characters they met, the villain they fought, the story machine they beat, all of it took place inside that toy. The Rick and Morty sitting on the couch in the living room had been watching the toy the whole time. Everything in the episode was a small, fictional, toy-sized performance that happened inside a product you could buy. The train even has a working website name, which the show shows in the post-credits scene. This revelation is the paradox of the episode, and it is the deepest paradox the show has ever planted. Because Rick, inside the toy, showed Story Lord a genuine memory of his dead wife Diane holding baby Morty. That moment was framed by the show as the most emotionally true thing in the episode. It was the thing that defeated the villain. It was the thing pure enough to break a machine built to measure storytelling. But now the audience finds out that the whole thing was non-canon. The whole thing was a toy. The moment never actually happened inside the world of the show. It was a performance inside a plastic object. Except, of course, the show has now shown the audience that memory. And once something has been shown, it has been shown. You cannot unsee it. Dan Harmon and the writing room have planted that image in your head. Diane, baby Morty, the words, "He is just like you." You have seen it. You know what it looks like. You know what it sounds like. You know how the characters were arranged. And in later seasons, the show treats this memory as real. The backstory with Diane, teased in the season 3 premiere and hinted at across multiple episodes, turns out to be genuine. The Rickshank Rickdemption showed Rick inventing an origin story for himself, where his wife Diane and young daughter Beth were killed by a rival Rick. At the end of that scene, Rick called it a fake. He said it was made up to trick the enemy scanning his memories. Fans argued for years about which parts of it were actually true. Season 5 finally confirmed that the wife and daughter were real. Season 6 confirmed that the rival Rick, known as Rick Prime, was real. The bombing was real. The grief was real. The thing Rick called a lie in Season 3 was in fact the truth. So, Never Ricking Morty, an episode that ends by telling you none of what you just saw happened,
episode contains a memory of Diane that is true. An episode that insists on being non-canon accidentally delivers one of the most important pieces of canon in the show. This is the real paradox. The show claims it is not telling a story. The show claims the serious arcs do not matter. The show claims that continuity is a trap, and that trying to hold the audience to a single version of events is a kind of prison the creators want out of. The show does all of this while at the same time quietly telling its deepest emotional truths through the exact serious arcs it claims to be making fun of. The memory of Diane is real because Rick cannot bear to show it seriously, which is why he shows it only inside a toy train, inside a non-canon episode, inside a fight with a villain who literally represents the idea of story. The only way Rick can let the audience see the truth about his life is by wrapping the truth in something he can still call a joke. And that is the final paradox of the show, the one that sits underneath every other paradox in this video. Rick and Morty insists over and over that nothing matters, that it is all just a cartoon, that the multiverse is too big, the copies too many, the time travel too forbidden, the canon too broken for any one thing to be held onto. And the show means it. The show is not lying. But the show also, every few episodes, slips in a moment of real, unguarded human feeling. A quiet kitchen, a wife, a baby, a father holding his infant grandson and knowing already what kind of man that child will grow up to be. The show is a liar who cannot stop telling the truth. The show is a machine built to avoid meaning that keeps producing meaning by accident. The show is a story that calls itself a non-story, inside a toy that calls itself a plot, inside a season that calls itself a joke. And that is where the journey through every Rick and Morty paradox ends. Not with an answer, not with a solution, not with a clean bow. It ends with a man standing in a toy, holding a memory he calls fake, and the audience knowing, quietly, that the fake one is the realest thing in the show. If you enjoyed this video essay, make sure to subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.